Morning, everyone. Hi. I hope you've had a nice half term, enjoyed a little bit of this sun. Great news. We have made it. This is the final topic. We are there for the first year. So this is the final Christian thought topic for this year. So at this point now, and I will go over this as we get going, but at this point, if you can get up to here, well done. Very, very well done, because I know how hard this has been for so many of you. So extremely good going. Thank you for your emails, etc. as always. So let's get cracking. Final topic. This one is moral action, Bonhoeffer. We saved the best till last. This is a really good topic. I do like this one as well. I like Person of Jesus, though. That's quite gritty, but this one is a good topic as well. Why? Because he's a historical figure. So if you're interested in history, if you're interested in the Second World War, anything like that, this brings a little bit of that juice to the session. So who was Dietrich Bonhoeffer? He was a German Lutheran pastor. He lived in a National Socialist state, so he lived in a Nazi-run state, and that is where the problems came out. He was one of the founding members of what became known as the Confessing Church. So the Confessing Church was what he established with a few others. So we'll get into why he first of all established this Confessing Church, and then what the purpose of it was. So there's four main reasons why the Confessing Church was established. You don't need to number these, you don't need to remember all of them, but there are four main reasons why the Confessing Church was established. The first was that they wanted to break away from the Christian church that was currently run under a Nazi government. And again, we'll find out in a second what was happening with the church, but they wanted to move away from the current Christian church so they wanted to break away from the Christian church because they rejected the Nazi ideology. So the Christian church that was currently there in Germany was going along with a lot of what the Nazi ideology was. The Confessing Church did not believe in the Nazi-run state. They did not believe what the Nazis promoted. They did not believe in the Nazi ideology. So they wanted to create their own church. They're still Christian. So he's still a Lutheran pastor. He's still Christian, but he wasn't following the Protestant Christian denomination of Germany of the time. Second thing was they valued church community above all else. So they valued the church community, and this later led to seminars and things together as the Confessing Church. They also believed in having an ethic of responsibility to others. And finally, the cost of discipleship, sacrifice and suffering. Number four is absolutely key. They are key words for Bonhoeffer. So key for Bonhoeffer is this idea of discipleship, suffering and sacrifice. They are key, and those are going to be in 12.4 in a few minutes. So what was happening in the church at that time? So in Nazi Germany, obviously, you have different understandings of what was happening in the time, and normally we look at what was happening for the Jewish people, etc. So Bonhoeffer could see what was happening to the Jews, but for him, the issue was not necessarily linked with the Holocaust, etc. For him, the issue was how the Christian church was going along with the Nazis and the Nazi understanding. So there was many different things that they were doing and promoting was the Christian church. So for example, they wore brown. So some Christians wore brown. This associated them with the Nazi socialist views. Some Christians were campaigning to get rid of the Old Testament because obviously the first 5 books of the Bible are the Jewish scriptures. They were also saying that anybody of Jewish ancestry could not go into the church, so could not become priests and vicars, etc. So there was many things that some Christians were promoting and siding with the Nazis. And so Bonhoeffer and his people did not agree with this whatsoever. And so their way of retaliation was to create their own church known as the Confessing Church. And so the Confessing Church started to establish within 1935. So it all kind of began, the links between the church and the Nazis started about 1934, obviously when Hitler got into power, etc. By 1935, they had designed and created their own church. So B, whenever it says B, Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer led secret and illegal seminaries. Anything that went against the Nazis was illegal, obviously. And obviously the Nazis were in charge. Hitler had an awful lot of power. And so Bonhoeffer would run these seminars, would run these lectures, etc., which were all illegal. They were all hidden. They were all behind the scenes. And this was to train new pastors. They needed people to promote the message of the confessing church. This was closed down in 1937 by the Gestapo, so the people, the Nazis, so the Nazi soldiers, the Nazi armies. But it was seen as a source of spiritual discipline, a life of prayer, caring service of the church. And so they were very strong with what they promoted. What's very, very interesting, though, and these are things that we would have discussed in lesson, this idea of Christians siding with the Nazis, etc., and how Hitler did see himself alongside Jesus. So, of course, Hitler wanted to be the most powerful man in the world. Well, why not side yourself with Jesus? You know, if you're going to go big, go Jesus big. And so Hitler wanted to get himself seen alongside Jesus. How do you do that? Get into the church, get control over the church. As we know, the Roman Catholic Church is one of the most powerful institutions in the world, if not the most powerful institution in the world, one of the wealthiest as well. And so obviously for Hitler, it was a massive win getting the church on his side. And this was only part of the church. This wasn't all of the church, obviously, and we're not talking about generalizations over Christians. There was many Christians that didn't also agree with the Nazis and what the Nazis were doing. But some of the prominent figures, you can see a lot of images of them wearing brown. You can see the prominent figures doing the Nazi salute. So I'm talking about prominent Christian figures in the church siding with Hitler. But this idea of the campaign to remove the Old Testament and any ministers of Jewish ancestry were either removed from the church or not allowed to be ordained. What's very, very interesting, of course, if you're following it along in your head, was Jesus himself was a Jew. So if you're removing the ministers of Jewish ancestry because they're promoting Jewish beliefs, the Old Testament, etc., but you want to side yourself with Jesus, again, there's that hypocrisy there. So Jesus himself was a Jew. He was never a Christian. Christianity was formed for Jesus after Jesus had died, etc. So there's a lot of issues within the church siding with Hitler because, again, Jesus was a Jew. So there are issues there that are quite interesting. This is definitely a topic that if you're outside in your garden, getting yourself, a little bit of that sun, read up about Bonhoeffer. Have a look into the politics behind it. It's very, very interesting, very, very good, quite meaty. So do have a little dabble with these areas. But as far as what you need for your essays and the spec, etc., there are 4 areas for Bonhoeffer. This topic is extremely straightforward. You get your 4 keywords in, you do a little bit of evaluation, Bob's your uncle, you're fine. So the 4 key areas that you have to talk about. So again, structuring an essay is so easy. You could do 1 on each, even though these do overlap. So it would be up to you how you should do it, but you could just get 4 easy paragraphs. Discipleship, obedience, grace, and solidarity. Those are your 4. So we'll just work through these, and then if at any point you've got any questions at all, just drop me a little message or anything like that, or just say hi if you want to. Let's have a look at the first one. Discipleship then. So discipleship, what it promotes is a lot linked to obedience. So these two are very, very much linked together. And I will post a picture of the board after this session as well, just so that you can get all your information. Discipleship, it promotes exclusive obedience to the leadership of Jesus and the will of God. This is above everything. This is above law, the human people in charge. You follow Jesus and God above all else, and you have exclusive obedience to them. We're going to come back to how that might pose some issues. But for Bonhoeffer, you follow Jesus. Do what Jesus would do. Do not have to follow the law. So this is quite interesting. It's a bit situation ethics, but rather than do what agape would do what Jesus would do. And obviously Jesus does promote agape. So above law and human leadership, you have to cut yourself off from your previous existence. So again, there is a core of this suffering and sacrifice. The sacrifice is when you join the confessing church, when you follow these views of Bonhoeffer, you have to leave your previous existence behind. You have to cut yourself off from what you previously did and follow a life completely dedicated to Jesus and the will of God. It is the only real faith. God's call demands action. You need to act. And again, this is something that Bonhoeffer practiced. One of the things I really, really like about Bonhoeffer is he isn't all talk and no action. There are so many people that we come across that they're really good at doing the talk, but they're not good at putting it into practice. Bonhoeffer practiced what he preached, literally, which is really, really good. Now, again, I'll give you some examples of that in a second. But for Bonhoeffer, God's call demands action. It's a single-minded obedience. And so anything like reason, conscience, piety, responsibility, all stand in the way of obedience. So that means reason, like in natural law. This means your conscience, again, like natural law-esque. All of these things actually stand in the way for obedience. The key focus should be God. God, Jesus, this is your key focus. Nothing else. Not your own interpretation, not your own conscience and your voice, etc. Just following what Jesus did and what Jesus promotes. It also talks about suffering and sacrifice is inherent to discipleship. And so what it means by suffering and sacrifice is cutting yourself off from what you're used to, making sure that what you're doing is hard. It's meant to be hard. Being a Christian is not easy. Doing these things involves going without and suffering, etc., and thinking selflessly. This idea of turn the other cheek, love thy enemy. These things are not easy to do. Being a Christian isn't meant to be easy. Finally, right down at the bottom, so apologies that you won't be able to quite see it on your screens, but right down the bottom, you need to pick up what it says is you have to pick up the cross. You have to pick up Jesus's burden, that cross, and you need to carry it with Jesus. So you need to follow the path of suffering that Jesus walks. So the idea that Jesus suffered when on the cross, you need to carry that burden. Jesus did wipe away your sins and gave you free will, but that doesn't mean that then life is without suffering. You have to suffer as well. So that's the first part of Bonhoeffer's ideas. We then move into obedience itself. So discipleship, being a disciple of Jesus. Obedience, this idea that Bonhoeffer often spoke against the Nazis. He, again, as I said, you've got to practice what you preach. He was out there making a name for himself. Hitler knew who Bonhoeffer was. Bonhoeffer was not popular, which is again why he eventually did die. Spoiler alert, sorry. So this idea that Bonhoeffer went against the Nazis, he promoted his anti-Nazi views at his university. He was a lecturer at university. He lost his job. He advertised his anti-Nazi views in these illegal seminaries, and again they were closed down by the Gestapo. All the public lectures were closed down by the Gestapo, and so everything he did, he found different ways of promoting his views. Bonhoeffer also is believed to have joined the assassination attempt on Hitler in 1945, so very, very much near the end of the war. It's only believed that he was part of the assassination program, team. Can you be a team of assassination? I don't know. But anyway, it's only a belief. So some people say that he was one that was plotting it. We don't know for certain, but it certainly is believed that he was part of a group of people that were plotting to assassinate Hitler. They spoke about, breaking the Christian teachings of obeying civil authority, justifying civil disobedience. So I'll say that bit again, because this bit's quite important, certainly for your discussions. He spoke about disobeying civil authority. That's the people in charge. That is the police. That's the lawmakers. He talked about disobeying them and promoting civil disobedience. So obedience to God, not the state. Now, if we were in lesson, we would discuss what people are called, or which groups of people are associated with not following the laws of the land and following their own religious beliefs and religious views. And sometimes they are known as terrorists. Obviously, terrorists and terrorism is establishing terror in people. You know, this is not promoting fear and war, etc. But it is certainly talking about breaking the rules of society. And so, what you have to weigh up or think about at least is, why is Bonhoeffer promoting being civil disobedient may be okay, but then if another group of people were saying, actually, we're not going to follow the law, we're not going to do what you say, they'd be seen as criminals. But then don't forget, Jesus was seen as a criminal. So is Bonhoeffer just a criminal that you agree with? Is he, you know, because you don't agree with the Nazis necessarily, and Bonhoeffer was also going against Nazis, is his views therefore acceptable, but he's still breaking the law? Yes, the laws might have been established by the Nazis, but they're still the laws. You can't, just because you don't agree with who's established the laws, doesn't mean you can then go against them. And so you can discuss the rocky road of promoting that civil disobedience. You've got like the Stephen Fry quote, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I don't think that is Stephen. I think Stephen Fry used that once, but I don't think it's actually Stephen Fry. So you could just say Stephen Fry once said, but it's not actually his. But it's the idea of one man's freedom fighter, someone that freely speaks to promote things, is another man's terrorist because it's going against somebody else's view. And so you can really look at the layers of argument within Bonhoeffer's teachings. We then have grace, the grace of God. We've come across this idea throughout Christian thought topics. So we've done the grace of God, and grace of God's talked about by St. Augustine. Probably your oldies talk about grace of God. We looked at this in Death and Afterlife. We've looked at this in the ideas of St. Paul. Calvin's mentioned it, etc. So the grace of God, or God's grace, is something that we have looked at before, but this is a key part of Bonhoeffer. Don't forget, if you've looked at it before as well, good synoptic links. Bring those links in. So use Bonhoeffer with St. Augustine if you want to, and vice versa. So what is God's grace? This is God's love and mercy. So the heart, love, being creative and all. This idea of God's love and mercy. It is forgiving of our sins. It's the offer of eternal life. But this is not a reward for your action. This is a gift that God bestows on you. So this is God's choice. This is God's gift to you. So it doesn't matter what actions you do, it's not based on actions, but it's this promise of eternal life, this cleansing of sins, etc. And it's based on his love and mercy. So you would hope, as an all-loving God, that would be bestowed on all. But again, Bonhoeffer, like St. Augustine, fairly traditional in their views. And then there are two types of grace. You need to know the two types. You have cheap grace and costly grace. They pretty much do exactly what they say on the tin. Cheap grace is when you go, I'm a Christian, easy, nothing much wrong with being a Christian. But then, oh, actually, no, I'm not going to forgive my neighbour. You maybe say nasty things against people. You maybe don't give to charity. You live in a big mansion, etc., etc. And obviously, they're very big generalisations. But it's the idea that you just go through your life and it's fairly easy to say you're a Christian. No, that's just cheap. That's like market stall. Designer stuff on a market stall. And he actually, I'm not just coming up with my own analogies there. Bonhoeffer actually talks about sold on the market. This idea that, it's not something that you can buy into. You can't buy your way into Christianity. And he says it's the deadly enemy of the church. What he argues is that you need to struggle to be a Christian. It should not be easy and comfortable. If being a Christian is easy and comfortable, you're not doing it right. And instead, you need to look to costly grace. Costly grace is where you follow Jesus, you give up your old life, and you make changes. You suffer, you sacrifice, you carry that cross of Christ. Finally, we have solidarity. It's not about being religious. It's not about religious. It's about being in a relationship with God, being with and for others. And then this is when a little bit of Bonhoeffer's life comes into it. So 21 days. So basically, now Hitler was after Bonhoeffer. Hitler had fed up with Bonhoeffer. He was causing too many problems. So people got Bonhoeffer out of the country. So they got Bonhoeffer out from where he was living and got him to America and to safety. However, 21 days in America in safety, Bonhoeffer returned to Germany. Why? Because he believed so much in solidarity. He believed so strongly in being for and with others that he couldn't do that from afar. He couldn't promote acting, suffering, and then being in America all safe and nice. No. So he actually returned to Germany. He returned in order to help, and help he did. Under the guise set up by his brother, Bonhoeffer being in the military, he rescued many, many Jews and got them to safety. He passed information to the Allies about the Nazis, etc. So he did a lot of undercover things. Again, all of this action, he was very, very vocal. He did everything he could to help the people of Germany against the Nazis, the Allies to come in against the Nazis, to the point where he was eventually arrested by the Gestapo. I think it was in 1945. I haven't put the date on, so I'm going to go with 1945, obviously because the war ends. So in 1945, he was arrested and hanged. So Bonhoeffer not only acted upon his views, he died for his views. So Bonhoeffer believed in this suffering so much that, just like Christ, he died for what he believed in against the Nazis. So again, it's a very compelling story. But then again, he died for his views. Is that no more than suicide bombers that die for what they believe in? And again, this is the discussion that you can have about the merits of where he was coming from, justifying the actions that he does. And so this idea of dying for what you believe in, does that make it right? Does it make it wrong? What do you think? And so this is where you can really look into the controversy surrounding Bonhoeffer and what he actually did. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything off there. Nope, that was it. Super. So that is Bonhoeffer, Moral Action, in 22.5 minutes. That's quite impressive. Very, very quick, I know. But obviously you can go back through, watch, use the PowerPoint. But Bonhoeffer's pretty straightforward. You just learn this. Throw a bit of evaluation in there. Bring a couple of other names if you want. A bit of Aquinas. Aquinas would disagrey, and say that reason is important. Bring a bit of St. Augustine in. Bring any of the names that we've covered so far. You can always throw Dawkins at people like this as well. But just bring in different names and evaluate, and that's your essay. So fairly straightforward is this one, as long as you tick your boxes and jump through your hoops with these. So at this point, has anyone got any questions about Bonhoeffer? I know for most of you, you won't yet have maybe had a look at Bonhoeffer, so this is probably your first introduction to him. But certainly ask any questions that you have. So the plan going forward is next week I'm going to do a how to write essays again. So I'm going to do the essays for Person of Jesus, moral, I can't remember the topic's name. It's that interesting. Moral principles. There we go. Moral principles and then moral action. So I'm going to do next week's video is going to be on how to write essays for those three. And then we'll see where we're up to with the following week. Obviously, the government have announced that we may be going back into college in some guise or some way. So obviously we're just taking it by ear. But next Monday's session will definitely still go ahead at 11 o'clock. I'm thinking that the following one, I might do just a question and answer for any topic, any of the areas, because obviously we're still going to have some sort of written essay. So I'm going to set you some questions and you can go away and write up some essays, mainly focus on philosophy and the ethics areas. And I'll send you those dates out again if you haven't received those emails. So I might just do a question and answer over any of the subject areas for this year. I could do question answers for these and just any other videos that you feel that you need at this point. It might just be that we just drop in and I'm here and you can just sit and look at my face for half an hour and I'll fill the awkward silences. So that's the plan for the next at least week, maybe a couple of weeks, but we'll see where we are at that point. But if for you can have, as we've said, your notes and the PowerPoint's done for the 6 topics, some sort of maybe revision cards or notes or some way of putting the information to something that you understand better. And then obviously the revision pack, because that's got your glossaries, your possible exam questions, things like that. And you're just working through that pack. You really are in the best position. And then obviously either make sure you get the previous essay to me if you haven't already. So the previous essay to do with Augustine, Death and Afterlife, or Natural and Revealed. So you're doing one of those 3. And then obviously have a go at one of these 3 next week when I set it. Once we've done the video, so I'll set it at some point and have a go at that. And then if you've got those essays under your belt as well, we really are in a very, very good position. You might not be confident with the information, and you might need a little bit of TLC from me in order to just really help with that basic understanding and taking it to that next level. But as far as dealing with the situations, etc., you're in a very, very good position. At least if you've gone through them, you've watched the videos, you've made some notes, and then we can fill in the blanks later and get that confidence there. So at this point, I have no concerns about filling in those blanks, but you do have to have done at least the legwork to start with for me to then help you. So if there are any other general points, questions about anything, I'm alone here with my cat. So any human contact, I joke, I have had social distance meetings now. You don't have to feel sorry for me. I just hope you're all right. Hope you're all doing okay. All right, folks. So if you have any questions, any problems, anything at all, my mind reading skills are a little bit on the blink with COVID. So please do send me an email just to make sure I'm getting those communications. So any problems at any point, please send me an email. Just get in touch however you can do. Obviously, I'll see you all next Monday at 11 for an essay practice one. Just keep checking your emails, keep in touch, and just keep staying safe, looking after yourselves, everyone, and we'll just take it week by week. So thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all soon. Bye, guys. Bye.